Once upon a time, in a room full of wonders, where every step leads to magic, and the journey of a true story begins here, with amazing guests and true miracles. Please like and subscribe for more amazing videos.
Well, this all happened when I was a little boy. I always knew when people were in trouble or they had gotten in trouble and they couldn't get out of trouble. Uh, I knew it, but I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to be somebody that was different. So I hid it and kept it to myself, and then what I thought would happen, and then I would feel guilty for not saying something. So I had this most of my life, and I just denied it. The other reason I denied it is because I thought it was devil's work. Because every time that I knew something, it was always bad. Because I was always trouble. So I just hid it. Up until my heart attack, which happened on 4/29 of 2024, that was all that happened. And during my heart attack, I had no idea how I got to this place, but I was in a bluish green pool of water. And I didn't have to come up for air. I could somehow breathe in this water. And since I could breathe in the water, I knew I was dead, because that doesn't happen here on Earth. You can't be in water and not breathe or be able to breathe. So I knew I was dead. And then there was 5 people that I did not know that was there, and I trusted them like they were, like I know my whole life, but I didn't know who they were. And each of them took me by the hand and took me to a table, and they would show me things. And then the next one would take me to a table, and it did that 5 times. On the 5th one, they had me turn, and there was a black wall right there. And I think it was just the edge of the whatever water that was. And all of a sudden, a light came down in that water, a really, really bright light. And it was warm. It warmed the water. It was inviting. I knew it, knew everything. I was all of a sudden forgiven. I had never felt that way on Earth. I had never felt that way since. And it was like a magnet, like I was being pulled to it. But I couldn't move. For some reason, all I could do was stand there in awe. So what happened was I was slammed back into my body here on Earth. I didn't float back into it. I was slammed. And then I had this excruciating pain in my chest, and everything went back to the way it was before I died. I knew from that point on that my life wasn't going to be the same. I was going to be different. I knew different. My life was never going to be about me anymore. It was going to be about helping other people. And I knew that, but I didn't really know how I was going to help anybody. So I got through the heart attack, and I got home, and you know how you feel like you've done something wrong and you got to tell somebody, but you can't tell somebody, and it's a terrible feeling? Well, that's what was bugging me. It was the feeling like I had before the heart attack, but it was so strong that I couldn't ignore it anymore, like I did before. So finally I just decided, since I can't ignore this thing, maybe I should just give it a chance. I should just embrace it. So I got onto Facebook, and I got in this room, people with NDEs and spiritual awakenings. And I asked them, how do I enhance this? How do I figure out what this is about? And they told me to meditate. Well, I had never meditated in my life. I didn't know how to meditate. And I asked them how, and they said, just close your eyes and watch what happens. So I did that. Oh, and they told me that I could ask my guardian angel what their name was. So the first thing I did was I closed my eyes and I asked them, what is my guardian angel's name? And all of a sudden I heard, my name is Joe, really loud. It wasn't subtle. It was, my name is Joe. So I started to meditate. So the way I meditated, I did it by trial and error. And I would put headphones similar to these in my ears, and I would lay down on the bed, and then I would just breathe 4 times, God's will in, my will out. And I would do that. And then what I do is I say the Lord's Prayer, because just like here on earth, where there's bad people, there's also bad spirits. And I believe when I died, it leaves a hole between the spiritual realm and the earth. And bad spirits can come through that hole and attach themselves. So the Lord's Prayer asks for protection. So that's what I did from that point on. So the first time I closed my eyes, I started seeing symbols like stars, triangles, circles. And then all of a sudden, that same tunnel-like vision that I had when I went to the light was there. You know, it wasn't, the light came straight down, but then I would go through a tunnel like a roller coaster, but not as fast. And I decided that I was going to let 2 things happen, and then I was going to find out what it was, what it meant. And so I went back to the room, and I said, now, how do I figure out what these things are? And they said, Google them. And I said, Google them? They said, yeah, just Google what you see. And so I would see these things, and then I would Google them, and it would give me a whole bunch of stuff that they were. And by the time that I had taken all that stuff and then sized it down, I could tell what my brain was telling me. It was amazing. So I started learning about myself, and I started learning about what my subconscious knows. And I would meditate, and next time I would say, let 3 things happen. Then the next time I would let 4 things happen. And after I had 4 things happen, I got stuck for a while, because that's a lot when you look up 4 things. So I kept meditating, and I started noticing that things around me started changing. I started seeing things in towels, and I started seeing things in the shower, the stuff on the walls. You know, I seen a mountain with a horse's head looking back. I've seen bats in there. I see all kinds of different shapes and faces. So that went on for a while, and then I was on Facebook, and I was in that same group, and this girl asked for help. And I was drawn to her forehead for some reason. I didn't understand. I thought maybe I had something happened in the heart attack where I have a brain injury or something, because, you know, why would you be drawn to somebody's forehead? So since I decided to embrace this thing, I asked her if I could take a picture of her forehead and look at it, and she thought I was kind of crazy, but she said, yeah, and if you find anything, let me know. So I did that, and I took the picture, and I was amazed what I saw. What I saw was a full screen of it was an image, like a picture, and there was a kitchen with a dishwasher, counters, paper towels. A woman was standing at the sink, doing the dishes. A table, the kitchen table, cupboards. It just looked like a full kitchen. And then all of a sudden, the woman was there was an island there, and she was at the island. And she was looking. This whole thing was an open view. It wasn't two rooms. It was one big room. And she was in an apron, and she looked out into the living room, and there was a man on the couch and a small boy on a couch. I assumed that was her husband and son. I don't know for sure. And then on the floor there was a dog, and that was the first thing I saw. So I went back to her and I I told her what I saw, and she started saying, "Oh my God, I know who that is, and I know who this person is. Did they have this?" And I said, "Yeah," or "No," And she just took that thing and said, "I can't believe it." She said, "I know exactly where that kitchen is. I know exactly how that layout is." And so that was my first experience really seeing stuff on people's forehead. And so I meditated some more, and I started seeing different, instead of shapes, I started seeing pictures of things. It was, one time I saw a picture of I was looking down, and it was kind of hazy, but I was looking down, and there was a library, and people were moving around in this library, and I could hear them kind of shuffle. It wasn't real loud or anything, but I could see that. Other times I was flying overhead of a forest, and all of a sudden I dove down into the forest, and there was like a grave, with dirt on it. And I dug the person up, and for some reason the police were there, and they said that this person has been missing for a long time. Now, I've never worked with the police or anything like that. I'm just telling you things that have happened. On the head is the frontal lobe, is right in back of the forehead. And that's where we remember things and cognitive actions, things like that. And I believe what happens is when we have an event happen in our lives, it puts a little mark there, just a little mark every time an event happens. And eventually those marks turn into a picture, a small picture. And those pictures make a bigger picture. And if it's pointed out to somebody that the picture on their head, they can all of a sudden see it. For example, you see my forehead right now? There's a guy there. If you can see him, he's got two eyes. There's two eyes, and there's a nose and a mouth, and he's got a beard. Okay, so that's what most people can see. But that picture that you see there is made up of smaller pictures, and then inside those smaller pictures are the marks. I don't see the marks. Those are too small. But I do see the pictures inside of there. And that's what makes that up. And so everybody has a bigger picture on their forehead, but sometimes they can see it and sometimes they can't. That's not a tattoo. You can see that guy moves. He's got a mouth. When I talk, he talks. You see? That's what's on my forehead. I never knew it was there until I did one of these interviews, but it's been there every time that I do one. And I can see big pictures. For instance, I was on a ferry coming back from Seattle back into Bremerton. That's where we were going, but the ferry, I don't know, it docked and then we went to Bremerton. But there was a guy on there, and I had my sunglasses on, thank God, and I saw his whole head was a white poodle. There was a huge white poodle with, his paws were here and here, and it was a huge white poodle. So I found it kind of funny. So I had to get up and walk away, because I saw that. But anyway, that's the ability that I have, and I've tried to help people with it. So far, I've been helping people with it. One person had a son that died tragically, very young, and she was stuck. She was mad at God because God had taken him so early, and she couldn't figure out why that would happen. She said he believed in Jesus and he loved Jesus, and he went to church and he did everything he could do to be a Christian. And so she couldn't understand how could God take somebody that's like that, because he could help a lot of people on earth just by being there. So she said, "Will you read his forehead? I have a picture of him before he died." I said, "Okay." I've never have read somebody's forehead that had died before. She said, "Read his forehead and tell me what you see." And I started reading his forehead, and I saw figures with jagged teeth, and I saw figures with eyes that were glowing. I saw one person, there was a cross, and at the bottom of the cross, this person was holding the cross, sticking their tongue out like that, with big evil eyes on it. Anyway, what I found is there were 6 demons on his head. And I think, and I told her this, it was hard to tell her, but I think what happened was that he had a battle going on when he was alive. He was loving church and loving God, but he had demons that were influencing him in ways that he just couldn't stand it anymore. To me, that God just took him so he didn't have to suffer. And so after that, the woman understood, and she went back to God that way. Because she was mad at God about the whole thing. But that's just one of the things that happens when I help people. Now, what I believe is that we're put here on this earth to help others. But the other part of that is that we have to let others help us. Because if we become unteachable, then we're straying away from the higher power. So I have to remain teachable, and that's when I listen to the feedback that others give me. So that's pretty much what's happening. I believe that this is a gift from God, and so I can't charge for a gift from God. I just can't do that. I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation where I'm disabled and retired, where I can do this for free. And I like doing it for free. I have a Facebook page that's called NDE and Spiritual Enlightenment. If people want a reading done, they just go to foreheadreadings@gmail.com. Foreheadreadings@gmail.com. Send me a picture of yourself facing forward from your shoulders up, and show as much of your forehead that you can. No makeup, no sunscreen, none of that, because it blurs what's up there. So if you do that, then I reply to you, tell you a little bit about how forehead reading works, and I'll put you on the list. Now, normally I don't have less than 20 people ahead of you, so you have to be patient. Each of these readings takes about 3 to 4 hours to complete. So I can do 1 or 2 maybe in a day, but I try to do just 1 because it really wears me out. So I have to get recharged in order to do 1 for the next day. But that's what I do, is I do that, and then I give you a summary of what I saw, what it means. Then I give you also a detailed file of what I saw, what it means, and a conclusion. So you get a summary with a conclusion, and you get a detailed file what it means, and the conclusion. Some people just want to know what I saw and what it means. Other people want to know what I saw, what it means, and what is the conclusion. How did you come to that conclusion? So that's how this works.